Des yeux qui font baisser les miens, un rire qui se perd sur sa bouche, voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, qu'il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, que ça me fait quelque chose. Il est entré dans mon cœur une part de bonheur dont je connais la cause. C'est lui pour moi, moi pour lui dans la vie. Il me l'a dit.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Napa and the gorgeous Roy Estate. We made it. Happy Wednesday. Happy holidays. I think we can now say that. I'm Kelly with Purple Cork. We have Brian Zupon, who is live on the property at Roy. What's up, Brian? Thanks for joining us. He's off to Paris tomorrow, so he's really excited about that. We also have the Bamboo Rose team and Columbus Consulting. So let's take a quick look at the hour, and then I'm going to pass you over to Jen, CMO at Bamboo. So we're going to hear from Jen, and then we're going to quickly taste through these amazing two reds with Brian for about 20 minutes. If you haven't opened those up, please do so. Let them get some air. And then we're going to go over to Nancy, who's going to lead us through a great roundtable with Peter and Swati. So can't wait for that. And then would love to hear from you. Do not be shy. Brian and I are not shy. Jen, I know you're not shy.
No.
So with that, I am going to hand it over to you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. So if you're here today, I assume you might already know that I'm Jen Schiffman. I'm the CMO at Bamboo Rose. I joined the company back in March, and I am just loving being here. And in case you watched the video that I sent out, I'm incredibly passionate about building community. I tend to be incredibly passionate about lots of things, but I am part of, as is Kelly actually, because she's an ex-CMO herself, now CEO and founder. We are part of some groups together that are more like marketing centric. So we're part of a CMO coffee talk group. We're part of different organizations that really focus and cultivate SaaS CMOs. So that's kind of where I look for my key community to learn from and gain insights from and grow from. And Melissa, who is with me today from our Bamboo Rose marketing team, she and I were talking about how can we create something like this for the retail community. I haven't seen it. If you guys are parts of other communities that we should know about, I'd love to see you mention them in the chat because we would love to learn more about that. But what we're really aiming to do is, this is not a selling event. We're not going to talk to you about our product today. We're here to try to create space for you to come together as professionals in the retail community, executives in your field, and gain insights from one another, solve problems together. Of course, there's always things you're not going to want to share, and we totally understand that, but it can be really invaluable to create these connections. Hopefully you're able to meet some of these folks for the first time. I know some faces are actually part of our customer advisory board. So hello, Heidi, and I see Mike Spadero here as well. We're glad that you're joining us. But yeah, we're grateful to have you spending some holiday time with us. It's really for you. And at the end, we're going to want to get a little feedback about if this was a good use of your time, if it's something you'd like to do in the future. I know the timing's a little tricky. This is a very busy time for all of you. But yeah, we're here to talk. We're here to gain insights and have an open dialogue and hopefully create something and build something over time. I know the communities that Kelly and I are part of started with just a few people, and now some of them are thousands strong. So we're starting something big. So on our panel today, we have Nancy from Columbus Consulting. We're going to do very brief intros and then hit the wine. So we'll turn it over to Nancy.
Hi, well, thank you very much. And I thank you everybody for taking the time off in a busy day, especially at the end of the day. But we are really looking forward to it. We're really looking forward to some questions, some really great questions. So today joining us is Peter Paluzzi, Peter from Carhartt, and we have Swati from Marissa's, and we really look forward to our time with you. So let me turn it back to, I believe, Jennifer or Kelly. Who am I sending it back to?
I think we're going to turn it over to Kelly and Brian for Roy Estate time.
Okay. I think we pass it to Brian. And Brian, off to Paris tomorrow. Not too shabby.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, for now, Greetings again from the Napa Valley. My name is Brian Zupan. I am the Estate Director and General Manager of Roy Estate. So you should have received two different wines from us. You have a Roy Estate Mr. Evans and then Roy Estate Cabernet Sauvignon. And so we'll be tasting both of those side by side. I'll be talking a little bit more about what makes these wines so special, what makes our site so special, our winemaking, and hopefully you get to really tee yourself up for should be a very fun roundtable discussion. So your first wine is going to be the 2018 Roy Estate Mr. Evans. So this is the wine that has that hare playing the drums in the front. We can maybe talk a little bit more about that. Before we start talking about the wine, I'll just encourage you to make sure you have some in your glass. I have this nice Bordeaux style wine glass here, and give it a big swirl, give it a big inhale, breathe in, breathe out, let it kind of work its way through your nasal passages and kind of let your mind start to wander here in terms of what are you getting out of this wine. Fruit, oak, various soil and earthy notes. Take your first sip too, and then we'll come back to the actual descriptors on the wine and how we can maybe evaluate them. But for now, I just want you to just kind of let you experience them totally without any context, just the pleasure of what's in the glass.
Nancy, you're following instructions. I saw you take a sip.
It's really
Everyone
good.
else, let's have some fun.
So,
All right.
this first wine is the 2018 Roy Estate Mr. Evans Proprietary Red. So, Guillermo, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the map here. And while Guillermo's doing that, this is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon with a little bit of Merlot and a little bit of Petit Verdot. Now, what's really exciting about Roy Estate is we produce all of our wines from one single vineyard site. So you may have heard in various wine tastings that you've done this idea of single vineyard estate grown wines, and those two things coming together. The first part is pretty self-explanatory, single vineyard. That means all of our wines coming from one particular place. We don't have multiple vineyard sites, and estate grown. This is a very kind of technical wine term, but all that means is that we own and we farm these vineyards ourselves. And we take that even one step further, where we planted the first vines on this property and have been farming this single site at Roy Estate for the past 25 years, exclusively, single-mindedly, obsessively only making wine from that one particular place. So with that said, we're located in the southeast corner of Napa. As you kind of see on this map here, you've got the Napa Valley, which is formed by the Mayacamas that you see on the west side, and then the Vaca Range on the east side. We're located in that southeast corner, and from the top of our site, about 600 feet above the valley floor, looking south, you can actually see the San Francisco Bay. So for those of you who have been to Napa Valley, you know that it can be very warm during the day, very sunny, but then at night you actually see and feel that cold fog being pulled in from the Pacific going up the valley. And Roy Estate being in the southeast corner, we're the first to have that fog. We're the first to have that kind of cooling influence each evening. As I said, we're about 600 feet up above the valley floor, located on Atlas Peak, which is the tallest mountain in that southeast corner of Napa. So that's going to mean that all that cold fog that's coming in off of the Pacific hits Atlas Peak and settles right down on us. It makes our wines a little bit more elegant. It means they have a little bit more finesse to them than maybe something that comes from the valley floor that's going to be a little bit higher in alcohol, that's going to be more overbearing in its fruit, perhaps.
Brian likes to call
So
this
that
one a warm hug, right? This is the warm hug, and
yes.
then the firm handshake.
Yes. So this first wine, we kind of think of it as you kind of return to it. It's that first introduction to Roy Estate. Cabernet, the little bit of Merlot, little bit of Petit Verdot coming from the lower portion of our single vineyard site. As I mentioned, we're kind of located on the slopes of Atlas Peak from about 300 feet to about 600 feet above the valley floor. When you really kind of breathe in this wine, when you take in the bouquet and you let it wash across the palate, you're going to get a lot of freshness, a lot of that brightness that I was talking about that is so definitive of our site. Think about things like bright red fruit, so red raspberry, red cherry, And then this floral quality too, this kind of violet, red rose. So all kind of bright red fruit floral tones coming out of this wine. So that's why we describe this wine as like a warm hug. It's that first introduction to Roy Estate. It's a little bit more approachable from the two wines that we make. And it's what we think kind of people fall in love with Roy Estate. So as I mentioned, all of this coming from the lower portion of our property, Cabernet Merlot, Petit Verdot, grown in very close proximity. I should talk a little bit about our winemaker here too, and how this topography of our site and that proximity to the San Francisco Bay, I think once again really expresses itself in our wines. Our winemaker is a gentleman named Philippe Melka, one of the most famous, influential winemakers in the world. And he comes from Bordeaux. And so when we talk about the climate of Bordeaux and the kind of the creation of these Cabernet Sauvignon based wines, we have a winemaker that worked at some of the great domains and great chateaux of Bordeaux, Petrus, Haut-Brion, coming over to Napa. So he's bringing over that old world sensibility of restraint, elegance, finesse, and matching that up against the kind of expressiveness of Napa Valley fruit. Those two things coming together, that's what we're trying to capture in this first Roy Estate wine. So that's the 2018 Roy Estate Mr. Evans.
And Brian, before we chat cab, why the name Mr. Evans? I love this story.
Sure. So I think that's a great question. So we make these two wines from Roy Estate, as I mentioned, one from the lower portion of the property, one from the upper portion of the property. We have the stream that cuts the property right in two. And so therefore we have these two different expressions, two different exposures, two different voices of Roy Estate. That wine that comes from the lower portion of the property, that warm hug, that beautiful, generous, red-fruited floral wine, we name that after our neighbor, Mr. Evans. So when we first started talking about these wines, I talked about how we planted the first vines on this site 25 years ago. It was a completely untested site, and we had to kind of show a lot of bravery and courage to kind of prove to ourselves that this site could produce these world-class wines, literally going from nothing but pasture land for horses, cows, and sheep to planting a vineyard there. So Mr. Evans was and still is our neighbor just on the other side of the knoll here. And Mr. Evans was our founding vintners, Charles and Shirley Roy, their first friend, their first mentor when they first acquired the property that would become Roy Estate. And even back then, 25 years ago, Mr. Evans had been farming in our little corner of Napa for about 20 years as just a grower, right? Never making wine, but a real farmer, a real grower. And so starting in the 2015 vintage, so 3 vintages prior to this, we named the wine after him as someone who just was never a consultant, never on the payroll for us, but just someone who really helped us find our true north in those earliest days of establishing the vineyards, making mistakes, asking the dumb questions. And so we thought that we would kind of pay homage to his generosity of spirit and his generosity of friendship. And we feel like the character of the wine that comes from that lower portion of the property, very similarly kind of those two things go together. So we decided to name the wine after him. So you may see Roy Estate wines out there at fine restaurants, fine wine shops that are just Roy Estate Proprietary Red, 2014 and earlier. This is the same wine, but this wine has been updated to reflect that now 25-year relationship that we have with Mr. Evans as just someone who's been very serving as an inspirational mentor to us.
I hope he gets a few cases every year.
He does get a few cases. Right before we all jumped on this call, we talked about coming to visit, and perhaps we can arrange something like that. But I will tell you a longer story when we're all together about getting Mr. Evans his wine. Even though he is our neighbor, it's not always the easiest thing in the world. But once again, it's the least we can do for someone who is so important to us. And I also want to kind of thank Kelly here in the sense that, this idea of this Mr. Evans wine, if you go onto our website or you read our tasting notes, you won't find any kind of an explanation as to who Mr. Evans is and any of that backstory. And so you kind of have to get to know us. You need to come and see us. You need to take part in an event like this to kind of be invited into Roy Estate. We're incredibly small, right? We're this one single vineyard site, only 17 acres under vine. So we're not open to the public. We only make in about 1,500 cases of wine. That's 1,500 cases of wine from this single site. Just to put that into context, Silver Oak, which is actually one of our neighbors just to our south, great, well-known Napa Valley fine wine brand. They make about 150,000 cases of wine, right? So 100 times more wine than we do. And that just kind of, it's crazy to think, right? There's 100 bottles of Silver Oak out there for every one bottle of Roy. And so once again, you only hear these stories. You really only get access to these wines by knowing someone like Kelly, who is that kind of wine country insider.
And Bamboo Rose and Columbus Consulting.
And of course, Bamboo Rose too.
We appreciate the name drop.
So Brian, as we get into the cab, let's also pull up some other photos of the property, because you recently opened this extraordinary hospitality space that we saw in the intro. So here it is from the. Yep. So this is kind of
so
Evans Vineyards.
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
Is this sort of, we're kind of looking at it from the vineyards, the Mr. Evans Vineyards?
Yes, so this is the lower portion of the property where the Mr. Evans is grown. Looking up and actually to the left, you can actually see the kind of Atlas Peak right behind us. And you can see these really rocky, kind of hard scrabble volcanic soils. Keep that picture that we just saw in mind before we taste the Cabernet. And yes, everything you're seeing here, this is what we call La Residence at Roy Estate. So this is a combination of hospitality space. We have a wonderful culinary program here with a full-time estate chef. We also have barrel storage here, a little bit of production. So the whole idea of Roy Estate is to make experiencing this single vineyard site as intimate as possible. So we grow everything here, we make the wine here, we age the wine here, we host people here. This is actually from a recent lunch that Kelly joined us at. Once again, that retail Uncorked, so we can do a luncheon together. And I think it's just a really great way to kind of show off the site. And so what you'll see here actually in this picture is this pond that sits right in the heart of the property. From that pond flows that stream that we were talking about that splits the vineyard right in two. And I think that's a good segue to talk about the Cabernet.
All right, let's do it. The firm handshake.
Exactly. So from that lower portion of the property where the Mr. Evans is grown, all of that sits below that pond, below that stream that we were talking about. So that warm hug, that bright red fruit, that vibrant floral quality that you got from wine one, that's going to be coming from the fact that over thousands of years, that stream has repeatedly flooded and is depositing that lower portion of the property with all this organic material, mineral deposits. Now kind of think about the other side of Roy Estate, rising very quickly from about 300 feet to 600 feet above the valley floor. And we saw that kind of slope of the site. The Cabernet, that second wine that you have, the Roy Estate Cabernet Sauvignon, same vintage, same vineyard, but now here we are on those upper slopes of the property where you don't have this effectively this floodplain that the Mr. Evans is grown in, this kind of fertile, soft, loamy soil. You have this rocky, hard scrabble, volcanic hillside. And so when you drink the Roy Estate Cabernet, you'll immediately get a much darker character to the wine. And when you're on the property, right, it's all coming from one place. It's only separated by about 20 yards with that stream that runs right through the vineyard. What you're going to have is this rocky volcanic hillside, volcanic boulders easily the size of a coffee table or even a small car just scattered across the hillside. That's what the vines for your second wine are going to be growing in. And so even to the untrained eye, right, the vines up above, the Cabernet vines, are going to be significantly smaller than those Mr. Evans vines grown down below in that fertile flood soil. And so you've probably heard about this idea of terroir, this idea of place in wine. What we try to do at Roy Estate is capture the inherent characteristics of this one single vineyard site and say just 25 yards, just two different topographies, two different soil types can give you a totally different drinking experience. So when you take your second wine here, the 2018 Cabernet, you're going to get more blue fruit, more black fruit. Think black raspberries, black currants, and you're going to get this mineral quality too. So think, you know, rocky gravel. Think darker tasting notes like roasted coffee, like cocoa or dark chocolate. Those are all things that are going to be coming up in this wine. So that's why Kelly and I like to call this wine like the firm handshake, right? The wine from down below, a little bit more approachable, a little bit kind of easier to melt yourself into. The Cabernet, a little bit more stately, still friendly, but it has some power, some muscularity, some structure behind it. And so
So
that to
which one
me
is more
is the two
popular,
different voices
Brian?
of the site.
Which one
Sorry.
is which one is more popular with consumers?
First of all, I would say that, yeah, there is no right or wrong answer here. There is no one wine better than the other, not a first label and a second label. It's really these two different voices of the same site. So I think it all depends on your taste. It depends on your mood. It depends what you might be enjoying the wines with, whether it's food or a particular occasion. And that to me is the beauty of wine, is that like this thing that's in the bottle can actually create and convey and enhance emotions, right? And so that's a very powerful thing. Right now, I'm looking out to a very kind of wet, gloomy day in Napa, but there's still the vines are still changing color, so there's still oranges and dark reds out there. I'm a Cabernet guy for today, just a little bit more brooding, a little bit more stately, a little bit more layered. Maybe in the springtime when the vineyard is just bursting to life, then I'm maybe more of a Mr. Evans guy.
Well, Brian, we'd love to take a photo with you before you leave. And then we also want to hear how we can get more of this delicious wine. Let's start with the photo.
Cheers, guys.
If you're not on camera, we'd love to see you, even if it's just for a minute. Hold up some bottles. Maybe hold up your favorite bottle of the two.
Oh, I've held up my favorite glass, the Mr.
All
Roy.
right. Yes. Here we go. Hey, thanks for coming on. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
To the new community.
Salud.
Salud.
All right. We got it. Yes, Brian, if anyone wants more wine, should they reach out to you?
Yeah, so if you or G wouldn't mind leaving my contact information in the chat, that'd be great. Thank you, G. But look, as I said, you know, Roy Estate, we're not open to the public. If you go onto our website, you're not even going to find any kind of an e-commerce link, which as a former student of retail myself, I almost kind of choke every time I see that. But we are lucky enough that we make such small quantities of wine that we sell our wines by allocation, and there's usually a pretty long waiting list of a little over a year to get the wines. But if you're interested and something in either wine that you tasted really kind of jumped out to you, if you find yourself in Napa and you want to actually see the differences in those two halves of the property, we are all about relationships here at Roy Estate. Me and Kelly go way, way back. We have we like to kind of create these longitudinal relationships. We love this idea of, you know, the community as well. So reach out to me. Once again, you won't be able to purchase the wines on the website, or you won't even see anything about visitation or anything like that. Just reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to tell you what we might have available, tell you about visiting us here in Napa, and hopefully, once again, continuing this first kind of just dipping your toe into the profundity that is Roy Estate and this vineyard that we feel so passionately about.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for
Thanks,
bringing
Brian.
a slice of Roy to all of us.
Right,
Good
guys.
job.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
Jennifer and I
Thank you.
first chatted about this a few months ago, we had a pick of vineyards, and I said Roy would be my choice.
Yeah, you
Thank
guys,
you.
guys are in for possibly the
Awesome
most
job.
elite community event. So
It's great for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which
I
one do
feel
you?
honored, actually. Thank you.
Oh. Nancy, do you have a preference between the two?
Yeah, Mr. Evans, I like the hug.
Me too. Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, we're going to transition over to the round table. Before we do that, we have a fun poll for you based on some pop culture news from this morning. Person of the year for 2023. Who was it?
Mm,
Or who is it?
you need to pay
Taylor
attention.
Swift.
yeah,
Taylor Swift.
I think everybody got that right.
I think so. We have a few more votes coming in. We do have a few for Barbie. It's not Barbie.
Oh, I have my screen split. I'm like, what's happening? The like thing came up over. I'm like looking. I'm like, what's going on? I don't even see the survey.
Did you vote, Jen?
Okay, I've now voted.
Right. Well, and I see you got the right answer. It is T Swift.
Right.
Who's a
Go
fan?
ahead.
Me.
Barbie.
All right. And Nancy, we have a poll on sourcing. I don't know if you want to run this now or tee up your panelists, and then it's there for you when you need it.
Well, we could put it in the chat box. Everybody could kind of take a look at it. I think that would help, right? If we could do that, that'd be fabulous versus kind of taking everybody's time now. Because we'd love to basically have questions at the end and just leave some time for people to chime in, because it's a unique opportunity to have a bunch of retailers and manufacturers together in a very, very small environment, a protected environment. And it's great to be able to freely ask questions. But I'd like to begin by just thanking our hosts, Bamboo Rose and Purple Cork, for a fabulous wine tasting. Not only was it enjoyable, but extremely informative. And I do look forward to my next trip to Napa Valley, to dropping by and taking a look at the house. Looks spectacular, by the way. So that for a great experience. But let's get down to business. Today, we're here to talk about supply chain collaboration, which has become a hot topic. And no wonder. Companies that collaborate effectively across the supply chain have enjoyed dramatic reductions in inventory and costs, together with improvements in speed, service levels, and customer satisfaction. Supply chain collaboration is the practice of collaborating with internal and external partners to optimize the flow in the supply chain in order to meet demand and ensure on-time delivery. Collaboration between companies requires that your organization share valuable information in real time by trying to create a near transparent communication, a network of partners to act as an extension of efforts to get the right product to the right customer, to the right market at the exact time they want it and need it. Very simple, right? I'm sure that we could all solve that easily. What types of collaboration are we referring to? There are three general levels of supply chain collaboration. There's transaction integration, which is automated transactions and processes. There's supply chain management, which is information sharing via EDI, internet proprietary tools that everybody has, and strategic collaboration, where partners take part in joint planning. And at some level, there's risk and reward for both. So we'd like to begin with asking our panel some questions. And from a perspective on retail collaboration, Swati, please share your point of view and offer any insights or strategies that have worked or strategic initiatives for this year and beyond.
You know, first of all, I think sourcing and supply chain has changed so much over the years, and more so after COVID. So having said that, today we need strong communication, a lot of trust, and a shared commitment across the board, you know, coming out internally and externally, understanding what we need to deliver the right kind of product, and full transparency to drive the efficiency. It includes sharing our demand forecast, really our inventory levels, and we have started doing that on a regular basis. I will say that's not something that we used to do initially. So there's a lot of transparency to drive the efficiency, and leveraging technology. I think technology is such a big part of what we do and how we do it. and really being able to leverage that technology across the internal and external partners. Over
Thank
to you,
you.
Nancy.
Okay. Peter, your view is somewhat unique in that Carhartt is both a retailer and a strategic partner or a manufacturer with any retailers. So can you
Right.
share your point of view as well?
Well, we are. We're omni-channel as well. We manufacture, we're supply chain, but we also have a robust e-commerce business. We have 30 some odd stores, and of course, we're a wholesaler. So we do kind of run the gamut as far as challenges. What we find is the exchange of real-time information is the biggest hurdle that we have. The connectivity to what the consumer or customer, based upon the outlet in which we're selling, the demands that translate all the way back to the purchase order or what, I'm sorry, there's some things I can't control. And the cat is feeling left out. The cat is feeling left out. And so it's the real-time communications and the ability to very quickly get our hands on the information that connects what the customer consumer, based upon the outlet, is requiring back to where the WIP management of where it is in the factory. We build a supply chain that can react. That's great. And that's been 20 some years of focus of having a reactive supply chain. But how quickly can we take the signals that are happening in real time at the market and translate that to a shop floor reaction? And so that's been the focus that we're having post-COVID as we're getting our inventories under control. I mean, 3 years ago it was about get as much as you can as fast as you can. It was bring it in, we can't get it. Now it's about being very strategic on what we build and having a response that once we're in season, once we're in market, once we're in front of the consumer, we can react quickly. How do you capture those signals? And how do you translate those signals from what the customer is saying in New York to what the manufacturer is doing in Vietnam?
Thank you.
Sure.
Excellent perspective. As you have heard, the benefits of supply chain collaboration are many. You need to be clear on your goals before you approach other businesses about forming a partnership. This will not only help you set specific parameters, but will also enable clear communication on goals and objectives to foster an atmosphere of trust. I would say the biggest challenge most of us face is trust within a collaborative supply chain or within our partners. So it's really how do you build it and how do you work through it that is really critical. There are two main types of supply chain collaboration. There's horizontal and vertical, which brings powerful benefits and is further enhanced by utilizing end-to-end shared digital cloud-based platforms to manage supply chain efforts. For those, vertical collaboration brings two or more businesses in the supply chain together, increasing productivity and performance. Horizontal collaboration allows supply chain partners to share the burden of demand and optimize costs, and obviously it's a shared risk. Those organizations that have successfully capitalized on multi-tiered supplier collaboration tools, such as PIM, PLM planning, and configurable process flow software to drive collaboration with a simplified milestone calendar. And I emphasize a simplified milestone calendar because we drive everybody crazy with a calendar that is too complex and unfortunately just goes into the garbage and everybody goes back to Excel. It really, if you do that, it really brings together the merchants, designers, and the supply chain for a focused, big picture objective. And I think that's the critical juncture that a lot of us don't really elaborate on enough. You know, what's the big picture? What are we looking to achieve and how are we going to get there? The goal being to mitigate risk, improve productivity, reduce manual errors, and to meet customer demand. For greater end-to-end visibility, some organizations are investing, as we all know, in AI, predictive analytics, and Internet of Things, or IoT, to enable a circular supply chain. Again, some companies are kind of nimbling it a little bit. It's really not full tilt in the supply chain, but everybody's talking about it. So I move on to Swati. Can you further speak to how silos are being addressed to eliminate complexity and what measures are being taken to drive supply chain collaboration? And really, how has you've touched on a little bit, technology supported these goals?
You know, I think one of the things, just to step back a little bit, is being customer centric. And all the collaboration is really because you want to be customer centric. Like, what are you getting, and what is your input and your output? So when I kind of look at few of the things that are driving it, again going back to technology, I think that is such a key and such an important driver, that if we can collaborate on a technology level, an IT level, and make sure our systems, our tools that we're using are really talking to each other, I think that'll be a huge, huge help to move things forward. I think that also gives us a true view of how data can help us to make the decisions that are required. And we're not really working in silos, but we're kind of putting everything out there. We're putting ourselves out there. We're putting the information that's required. And the decision making at that point just becomes a lot more easier, and it's a lot more efficient, and really what is required to drive the business. I remember in the old days, I think the word collaboration was never used in supply chain. Everybody did their own thing, and we just kind of at the end of the day expected we get product in the store, which we did, but in a very different way. The challenges were a lot lesser in those times, and we have a lot more challenges today. And I think coming out and really collaborating with not only internal and external partners, but a platform like this, I think is so important and so helpful. So I think on many levels, if I look at it, I think just being more collaborative, being transparent, efficient, using technology to its best, and really seeing what we need, being customer centric, like I said, is super helpful.
Great answer. Peter, what can you elaborate it from your point of view?
I can. Nancy, we worked on calendars together. So, we've all done multiple end-to-end calendars. And one of the dangers that I find universally of silos is all the hedging that has to take place. And I like to think of it as the only thing that kind of overcomes the hedging, because if you don't know the uncertainty, you have to guard yourself. You got to give yourself 18 weeks to produce instead of 12. You got to turn samples in 6 weeks instead of 4. You have to guard yourself to the extreme. The silos create redundancy. It creates long lead times. It creates a need for high inventory, all the things you said at the beginning. What I see is what overcomes is what I call guarded transparency. We all tend to have a guarded transparency. We have to get over that. We have to get over that. I'm willing to share what it is, but I'm making no commitments. We have to all agree that, listen, we're going to give you the information as we know it, as we see it, as it evolves, from the customer when they're coming in and buying, which is POS data, back to the cutting room on the issues that they have when they see the production. So we have to get to the point where we get rid of the guarded transparency, where I don't want to share something that I'll be held to, and start an end-to-end visual expectation of what's happening in real time, so that we all sign on to solving it together. Then we can employ the tools that we all talked about, as far as having made-to-order type of operations, or VMIs, or rapid response, or whatever technology we're using. It all comes down to the ability to share information unguarded, so the entire supply chain can react.
Good, perfect. Swati, going back to the calendar again, because I think that's such a stumbling block for most of us. And as I look at it, we all have our own point of view of the applications of the software that we use. And it is, you touched on this before, it's not all integrated. So what have you found this the easiest way to work through the merchandising calendar? Because some of the tools are just not integrated.
I think I would kind of put it in two different buckets. One is first building the calendar, and the second is actually executing the calendar. And I think execution today, not only with tools, but I think thinking in a little bit of an out of the box way. because we're all used to be doing it a certain way. And I think that our vendor partners are actually, they've given us a lot more information than they have before. So taking a full view of the calendar and saying, how do I turn a 42-week calendar to a 37-week calendar? And how do I go from there? What do I eliminate from that calendar so that, one, it's driving the efficiencies, it's giving us what we need at the end, but in a whole different spectrum. And I think, again, it boils down to partnership and transparency. There are many ways, all of us do it in different ways. We drive our milestones in very specific ways. I think, milestones is probably the most important and key element of the PLC calendar, along with our vendors and the tools that we set. And our tasks is what really drives the calendar. So calendar is important, but I think there is an element of not letting the calendar drive us and having it do a little bit of the reverse with more of a human touch to it.
Great answer. Peter, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, we're managing and have been managing through KPIs, where everybody understands what their requirements are from the first design down to the responsiveness within the supply chain. And KPIs and the ability to monitor how we're progressing against those expectations is critical. And so there's no denying it. But I think that what is lacking and has really been a fundamental shift is a comprehensive sign-off on what that end-to-end calendar is. What is the end goal here? The end goal is to create an environment where we can respond to the customer or the consumer's requirements in season, whatever that is. New product, VMI, chase programs, whatever that is. The end goal is all this calendar means that we have to respond quickly to whatever those changing demands are, and none of us knows what those demands are. One of the things that has changed in the way we view calendars is that it's not sitting in a room and figuring out amongst the team. It is expansive. It is, what is IT's involvement in it? What are the factories? What are our key raw material suppliers? What are we doing? What is our customers? What are we doing from end to end to set up those milestones, set up those processes, and set up those critical monitoring points that ultimately not only give you great KPIs, which we're still all measured on KPIs, but also services the needs of the customer.
Very informative. Thank you. As we have heard, information sharing is a powerful tool. And in the case of supply chain collaboration, sharing information leads to enhanced knowledge across the merchandising and the supply chain that can lower inventory levels, which is a major goal, achieve higher turns, shorten lead times, lower warehousing and transportation costs, and improve customer service metrics, which we all are measured on a continual basis, and also impact quicker decision-making because you have greater transparency and you have the information available to you quickly. So Swati, what are the biggest supply chain issues you are facing today, and how do you see supply chain collaboration evolving in the future to address these challenges?
I think one of the biggest issues that I'm just going to go back to 2 years ago, was inventory buildup. And we all saw that, we're all working through it, no matter where you are. I think we've been more and more proactive as far as going out to our external partners and being fully transparent that we have the inventory that's, it's way above what we really need. But at the same time, we do have a business to manage. And by that, I mean different components, right? So one is we got to still continue buying the product. We still got to source from the countries that we have. We still got to manage our costs. And it's difficult to balance cost when you don't have the big buys that you've had initially. So I think, really what we've done, from a pretty big challenge as far as the inventory, definitely have brought it down. But we've put new parameters in place, and Peter actually touched on it, and I really like the VMI process. That's something that we have implemented. I know you can do it for the entire business. You can do it for your core and your basic. You know, you've got that portion of it that you can run on a more controlled basis. And using warehousing from our vendors' point of view as well. You know, of course, you have your DCs, you run your product day in and day out, but how do you leverage your vendor warehousing in the country so that you can actually make sure, not only from a VMI perspective, but you've always got your shelves stocked up so that you don't fall short of product. You've got the right sizes. You know, you're not only looking at fringe sizing or belly sizing, but you've got it across the board. So I think there are definitely a lot of caution as we move forward. Not everybody is cleaned up as far as inventory goes. I think there's still going to be another year. To me, 23 and 24 has been a cleanup year, no matter, you know, whether you're doing sourcing or merchandising. My role at Maurice is a little bit of a crossover. I do sourcing and merchandising, so it helps me to see both the sides of it and really bring in product as needed. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot more challenges, but this is one of them.
Thank you. Peter, how do you see it?
Well, I think Carhartt's not unique in the aspect. Most companies I've been associated with, and you too, Nancy, I think we're transitioning as an industry from a make to stock to a make to order. Now, how far down that spectrum we can go remains to be seen. But we come from a world in wholesale where you predict how many you're going to make, and then the sourcing people run out and make a whole bunch of product and put it in the warehouse. And hopefully the orders come in. And we're seeing that, especially over the past few years, predicting what the market's going to do and stack it up in the warehouse is not going to be successful. It scares me to hear we got another year of working through inventory. But it taught us all a lesson of make to order in its purest form, stack it high and let it fly, as we used to say. That's gone. Make to order, which is wait until you know what the customer wants and make the goods. That's the nirvana state. Now, how do you enable a supply chain to find the efficiencies of make to stock with the ability to change quickly of make to order? And that's what we've been focusing on. And there is a lot of tools you can employ. You can do VMIs, where you push back onto, in our case, the supply chain, with the retailer onto the brand to stock the goods and respond to the POS data. Very key, very big part of it. There's also blanks programs. There's rapid response. There's running SKU outs through small cuts. There's a lot of things that can be employed, and we're exploring them all as an industry and as a company. And there's no one fit solution to it. However, none of it happens if we don't have just real-time, rapid exchange of information and untethered, not guarded, not held back, not worried that we're going to share this information and be held to it. It has to be unguarded, untethered information flow that says, this is what our customer needs. How quickly can we respond to it? Where is it is it on the ship? Is it in the warehouse? Is it in the factory? Is it in the cutting floor? Where is it? So that to answer the question, a little long-winded perhaps, our whole challenge is how do we take our responsive supply chain with all the tools we know and enable it to react faster, better, quicker in season.
Good. One version of the truth, as we say, right?
One version of truth, and everybody's seeing it.
Right. Visibility to one version of the truth is really the mantra, right?
Hey, Nancy, sorry to interrupt. I think this might be a good time though to pop your poll up. I think the question that you had was around all these challenges. Not community events, Guillermo, the actual poll that Nancy had. We'll get to that. Hopefully people are going to say yes when we, sneak attack that later. But I would be curious on this one. And if, because we do only have 10 minutes left, I want to make sure we get people to poll this. And then of course, feel free to chat if you have a question or you want to share an experience.
Can you only pick one? Because I think I could probably,
I think it was check all that apply. It was
check all that apply.
Yes.
It's only one.
Yeah,
So do you want us to continue and then we'll let everybody kind of take their time to do that as we go?
How many more questions do you have, Nancy?
We only have really nothing at this point. Oh, I have one. I have
One?
one. I have one because this is an important point. It
All
is
right, we'll
it is
keep it open.
universally agreed that multi-stakeholder collaboration is paramount to driving meaningful and lasting change. Collaboration with a supply chain partner drives improved transparency, which is what we're talking about, promotes higher ethical and environmental standards, ESG, and exerts better leverage over supply chain partners. Moreover, joining efforts within the scope of a single platform allows the sharing of ethical compliance, data, and protocols quickly and efficiently. So Swati, how does collaboration improve visibility and potential role in supporting the ESG initiatives within Maurice's? Everybody's talking ESG, it's the hot topic.
Yeah, I mean, transparency is important again. It boils back to that. How transparent are you as an organization to give your customer the information as to where everything is coming from? And I think, there are a lot of other protocols that are built around that. You've got compliance, how you work around it. But all in all, short answer, transparency, and really kind of, throughout the supply chain and not hiding anything, because that's the key. And that's really what's going to get the customer.
Peter?
Yeah, it's a big conversation in the industry and within Carhartt, and all the companies really have been associated with. I think it goes back to the collaboration with our suppliers that we choose, like most, want to do the right thing. Okay, it's given them the ability, the visibility, the assurance, not dropping surprises on them, that allows them to be more conscious of the worker. And that's ultimately what we want. It's environmental, it's social, but a big focus of ours is workers. And we have a philosophy that we will not take advantage of any worker. It's not going to happen. I think we're shared in that. But it's the surprises that put the factories into the situation where it's difficult for them to predict, where they have to shut down a line, they have to shut down a factory, they got to pull back. I think that the more you can smooth this out, and I'm not talking about just smoothing out production, the more you can show where you're headed, where your mind at, what your thoughts are, the better they are prepared to set up a supply chain to service it. It's the surprises that put them into a situation where factories have to shut down or shift. So I think ESG is very much aligned with giving them visibility, collaborating, and then having the tools so that we have real-time communication.
Great. Thank you. The both of you have been fantastic. So I think hopefully we have the survey. Do you have, Jennifer, do you have any results?
I think we can call in. Yes, here we see it.
Okay.
Collaborating with internal and external partners.
Yeah. That is a hot topic. I mean, within the industry right now, because everybody's pushing back. The retailers are pushing back on the vendors. The vendors are pushing back on their supply chain partners, because it's all about managing risk and managing inventory. And the costs associated to it. So that becomes the hot topic of the day.
I think it's also the size of the company, right? I mean, I feel like we've grown so much internally, big teams, and it's difficult to manage the big teams and the external partners. So definitely seeing a lot of that, how do we organize ourselves internally so that we can support the external partners?
Great. So do we have any questions from the group? We'd love to hear from you. You have a unique opportunity. You have Swati and Peter here.
And each other.
That's right. Great insights.
Yeah. Hey, on Purple Cork team, if you want to put the whole group back on the screen, I think we could shift back to that at this point too. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, if people are feeling, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, this isn't really a question, but just kind of a comment regarding supply chains and COVID. One of the things that was very prevalent right when COVID hit was when we saw retailers cancel POs on factories. especially in Central America, where for years, am I still on?
Yes.
Mhm.
Where for years they, had a handshake relationship with the factory. And when they canceled those POs, they had materials, they had fabric, they had things in the, on the cutting table, they had factories full of goods and warehouses full of goods. And basically, and you can name them, starting with Macy's, came in and said, we're canceling these POs, we're not taking any of it. So the trust was just destroyed. And I think we're still suffering from that. I don't know if you have a comment or thoughts around that.
Peter, you've done a lot of business in the Caribbean. Do you want to have comments on that?
He's 100% on. I mean, we had vendors calling us where POs were canceled on the water. And I'm not going to do any call outs on that. Carhartt was extremely conscientious of that. We held our end. And I think I don't think you can tout ESG and then do things that are completely counter to the ability to manage a large workforce. I mean, we're talking suppliers that got 200, 300, 400 people operating on your product, right? There's not sudden jerks within the supply chain that they can manage. So I think that it came down to, or it absolutely came down to the fact that if we really are talking about ESG, if we really are talking about workers' rights, it's a partnership. Okay, and COVID was the extreme. We've all seen it. It just took everything to the extreme. That's all. But it's a partnership. We can't call up and say, you're going to get major chargebacks if you don't ship next week, but don't work overtime. Right? We've all been in that query. ESG is a partnership, and that partnership requires predictability, and that predictability requires transparency, and that transparency requires operating systems that are more than just a handshake, but end-to-end visibility. So I agree with what Jim says.
What other great questions do we have? Don't be shy.
I had an observation that I thought was maybe worth pitching to the group, and then we can, if Guillermo, if you're there, if you want to put the yes or no, will you attend in the future off to the side, because I know people might have to start dropping off. And thank you so much to all of our participants and panel members. Thank you so much to everyone for coming and joining in with this. Hopefully there is interest and we'll continue to grow this thing. And in a year or two, who knows how big it could be, and we can do all kinds of stuff. We could build a Slack community, all the fun things I'm dying to do. So say yes and satisfy my desire on that. But one of the things that I've noticed in this conversation is it sounds like there is also a lot around the softer side of collaboration. I heard Peter talk a lot about trust and vulnerability. And I just mean, that it's more an observation. I'm just curious, do you tend to dedicate almost equal mind share to how do you foster an environment in your company where people can share truth and be vulnerable and know that there are unexpected things that happen, things are going to go awry. Sharing that information is important while balancing technology, transparency, and process to bring that side of it together.
I'll take that, Jennifer, having lived that life. It's about being fair and being open. Because of the vendor community just wants to know the truth, and they want the information, and they really want to be able to understand why. So it's the explaining the why, and it's also not killing people.
Yeah.
So we're in a business that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So when you come to the meeting, just tell me the truth, we'll solve it. Don't lie about it. I mean, and it works perfectly. So people know that they can trust you, and they can come into a room and share information. If the vendors feel that they can trust you and call you and tell you they have a problem and you're going to work it through with them, it's really open communication to build the trust, because they're critical to your success. Yeah. It takes a year to bring on a new vendor. So to kill a vendor, you don't want to do it. And really, and training your people, you're better off training the people the way you want them than turning over staff. Because today, the knowledge of this business is innate. It's not through a book.
When you guys talk about the collaboration and calendarization, are you talking which modules specifically? Are you doing it in PLM and production, or are there other modules that you're using for merchandising calendars that are good to run the internal teams as well as the external team partnerships?
Swati, you want to take that?
Yeah, for me, I mean, we were definitely the PLM and the assortment planning tool. I think the combination of the two is critical and important to drive it end to end. And you need a little bit of both. And I think, from a PLC model, taking what the vendor has as well. And what I mean by that is as you build out your time and action calendar, you have to have integrated tools between the two, not only the PLM, but also things like, if you're chasing into something or you've got a VMI model that's set up, how are you transferring data in and out? And a lot of the vendors actually have set up their own AI tools. And that's something very new in the market. And we're learning as we go. But,
I'm sorry, they've set up their own what?
AI, artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's another thing. It's very new. We're learning. We just got, whiff of it like probably 3 months ago. And we're like, yep, we could transfer data as long as you have the tools in the system and you teach us how to do it. But I think that's another tool that is going to be really big in supply chain going forward, or merchandising.
So do you have an external assortment planning tool that then links your plans into Bamboo Rose? Gotcha.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're seeing your vendors using AI for attribution, or for what kind of things have they enabled already?
It's actually more for inventory planning.
I'm sorry, what?
Because that's been the biggest challenge. The data that we bring from internally and send to them, that's kind of where I think the most amount of play is. And that's where the biggest risk is as well. So really kind of going from there, and then we'll see as it plays out, if that information accuracy is there, how they build it, where the risk comes down, then you can use it for multiple things. But that's
Okay.
To me the starting point.
Thank you.
Well, we still have a lot of people on the call. So what other questions do we have, or comments? You can just make a comment too.
I'd be interested. I find the challenge we're having, because when we set up the ability to track the information, we looked for the best in class for that area. We got a great PLM system. We track, we have a pack and scan that gives us great information on the ASNs, and we're working with our partners. What we're lacking is the connection between all of these great best in class, right? I mean, that's where we augment it through BI reporting and, basically throwing people at it, and, a lot of time on Excel. But this industry as a whole, I haven't seen a real good solution that takes the change in demands at the front end back to how can I respond with it? Because remember, where we're at, we're buying the buttons. So we're all the way back to where are we in the cutting room. So I haven't seen a real good end-to-end that connects all the best in class together. Be interested in what do we, is that a miss, or is that just I'm not aware of it? It's out there.
I don't think it's there, Peter. We've got a client that we're working with implementing an ERP system. They have 142, integrations. 142. It just, and you're talking about some of the best software for each of these areas that's out there. And then there's the other 100 that you're like, what do we do with all of this? And it's just
best in class solution, but back to the silos.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But you're exactly right. It's very difficult to find. It's almost like start over from scratch, because if you're trying to go into a company that's, again, got 70, 80 software programs.
But I said, this isn't a pitch zone and I'm not going to pitch, but you know who's hosting the call. And if you need help, we can arrange other calls for that as well. Are there any other questions or comments from the group that's still on? Everyone said yes, that they would come back. So I'm excited. Melissa and I, for what it's worth, really fast, I'll say that the two events that we're planning on having in probably the January timeframe, we thought we'd cram another one in before Christmas, but we decided that was pushing it. So we did a great survey with the Interline on the state of supply chain and sourcing. We're going to do a reveal of all that content. So we'll share that content with you guys. I think it's really relevant to this conversation. And then we're going to have webinar discussions, community discussions around that. And then this one's a little bit more of a self-serving event. So it's not a community event, but we are going to do a deeper dive for anyone who's interested on PO management. We have a very collaborative PO system that's going to be coming in January. So we'll let you know if that's interesting to you, but definitely the extension on the survey, I think this group would enjoy for sure.
That's great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Even if it's a little self-serving, for me, it's interesting to make sure I'm getting the distinction between what Peter and the other lady, Swati are doing, and like what's in Bamboo Rose versus what they're integrated with. It's otherwise hard to tell the boundaries.
Yeah,
and what
absolutely.
should be expecting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well,
Thanks everybody
mix,
for this
thank
great
you.
information.
Thanks for coming. We're so excited that
Thank you.
everyone showed up for this, and hopefully you really enjoyed it. If you have my email or Melissa's email or Nancy, shoot us some feedback. Let us know what you'd like to hear more about. We'll follow up with you as well, because this is kind of our founding member group, and we're looking forward to continuing this for time to come. Thanks for sticking out with us a little bit later. I'm happy to stay on if there are other questions and the discussion continues, but we appreciate the time you've given us, and we understand if you have to make it to your next stop this afternoon or evening.
Well, I think
Thanks
everybody's they're all enjoying
Thank
their
you all.
wine. That's why they're here.
Right, I got some more wine
Yeah,
to drink. I gotta go.
The fine line.
Thank
between
you very
enjoying the
much. I
wine-
appreciate all your time.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
thought this
you.
was great. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good
Happy
one.
holidays, everybody.
You too, Nancy.
Okay, we'll talk to you. Thank you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
now.
Bye. Bye.